who don't have jobs, who thought they were going back to work, and unfortunately, they're not going back to work just yet. And there's some great players going into the Hall of Fame this year, and unfortunately, there's no game. It's been a part of the NFL for the past 45 years. And it's disappointing that there's not a game for these people to be a part of. And so this strike, this lockout, the damage done to it, this league, you know, as sports fans, as football fans, we don't feel it, we don't care about it because we know that there's going to be football played and that's all we care about. But there are people who are actually really hurting because of this situation, and unfortunately, you know, some people just lost some jobs because of this lockout. I'm reading right here. They said they had 4,000 volunteers in the community that helps with this event. Now they don't need them. Last year they sold, you know, 20,000 tickets for the enshrinement. Well, guess what? All that money is now wasted. And, unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. The other ugly involved in a lockout is the NBA. And the NBA situation is even worse than the NFL's because of the fact that nobody cares about the NBA. Nobody cares if the NBA doesn't play next season. And the reason why I say that, I know people get offended when I say that. Well, there's a huge reason why I say that. When you have players talking about playing overseas, playing in countries that they have no affiliations with, that should tell you all you need to know about how much people care about their particular sport. For Darren Williams to sign a contract with a Turkish team, and supposedly this Turkish team is in negotiations with Kobe Bryant. Now, Kobe's people are denying it, but just think about that for a second. If the top players in this league decide to go play overseas, what's going to happen to the NBA? Whatever happened to loyalty to that shield? Whatever happened to the loyalty of the veteran players who played before them? To take your game someplace else? Can you imagine the NFL if, Canadian football has already started, and the Canadian Football League has already started. So can you imagine if Tom Brady said, "I'm going to go play for the Toronto Argonauts until the NFL works its situation out," or Adrian Peterson going to play for the Saskatchewan Rough Riders until the NFL works its situation out? Think about that for a second. This weekend, supposedly Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, Derrick Rose, I think, and like a few other guys are playing in the Philippines in some charity event, to try to raise some money for the, I guess the tsunami and all that stuff over there. But can you imagine if all of those players decide to play someplace else other than the United States? But here's the kicker. What if they got hurt? What if Darren Williams gets hurt playing for this Turkish team? Do you think about that? What if Chris Paul this weekend playing in this charity event in the Philippines turns a knee? David Stern has had 20 years of bliss. He had Magic and Larry and Michael and Julius and Moses and Kareem and all these players under his time as the commissioner. And the NBA enjoyed prosperity. The NBA enjoyed good feelings around this country. People like basketball. I tell people all the time. In fact, I wrote in my letter to radio stations as I'm trying to get my shows on sports radio stuff. We missed those days. We missed the 90s. We missed the 80s when being a star athlete meant something to the star athletes. Magic Johnson loved being a star. Loved that everyone loved him. Now, granted, Larry Bird wasn't the most friendly guy, but you never saw it in Larry Bird's performance on the court. Michael Jordan didn't like talking to people, but you never saw that in the way he played. And they never ever even thought of the idea of going to play in Europe, or going to play in China, or going to play someplace else. And here's the sad part. all of us as sports fans, we were glued to the NBA. In the 80s and the 90s, we enjoyed probably the NBA more than we enjoyed the NFL. I'll speak for myself. I enjoyed the NBA more in the 80s and the 90s than I did the NFL. And even though my football team, the New York Giants, won a Super Bowl in the 80s and in the 90s, I still was more likely to watch the Knicks play than I would watch the Giants or the Jets play. I would sure watch the Bulls play. And granted, during that era, yes, Joe Montana, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Lawrence Taylor, probably the four greatest baseball, basketball, and football players that I've ever seen play those sports. But it's sad to me that the NBA players would even think of that. And that's what bugs me about this NBA and NFL lockout situations. There's two sides to every argument, we all know. But what's so frustrating is that there's a selfish side of sports that bothers me. Yes, these guys get paid a lot of money. And yes, if someone waved $5 million in front of my face and said, go do broadcasting in this country, of course I would. But it's disturbing. It's disturbing as a sports fan to understand what I think I understand about sports and to see how the value of the dollar, the value of the spoken word is so devalued in all sports. Because they talk about money as if it's, monopoly money. You get fined $100,000 in one sport, player just pays it like it's no big deal. You get fined $50,000 in a sport, it's no big deal. But it's so disappointing when you think that these guys don't care enough about us, the people who pay to come see them play, the people who pay DirecTV, $300 a year to watch the football package, for example, or $200 a year to watch the NBA package. And for you to tell me that you're going to go play in Turkey because the league that's been paying you all these years, all this money to play, you think has turned their back on you? Man, it really bothers me. And I think David Stern ought to just stand up and say, look, you go play someplace else, don't come back. Don't come back. We don't want you to come back. If you think you're bigger than the NBA and can't just be patient until we negotiate some kind of deal, then just go. Don't come back. Simple as that to me. And so I'm hopeful, that all this stuff is just a smokescreen. All this stuff is just a smokescreen. And that we'll get what we've had in the past. And we'll finish the show on 89.7 KLAS FM as we're talking about the ugly in sports.